And we're live. Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Double A Team podcast. As you can see in the title below, it is the Chicago Bears Victory Monday, where I bring in two of my regular guests who are heavily involved in the writing as well as the social media aspect of the Chicago Bears. With me, as always, back for another one, as always, is Rishab Skiri from YouTube's DaWindyCity Productions and my online contributor colleague from BearGogglesOn.com, a part of the Fans-Sided Network, Brendon Donald. Gentlemen, welcome, good evening, and happy Victory Monday. Really, I'm sure a lot of you guys are relieved about yesterday's game, and let's not waste our time and let's talk about the yesterday's victory. Certainly, a lot of was being made about Tyson Bagent's first career pro start. His last start was in collegiate against the Division II playoff against Colorado School of Mines. Certainly, the school that none of us have never heard of unless it was Tyson Bagent playing. So you learn something about when you have Tyson Bagent starting yesterday. And, I wrote on the article that was posted on Sunday that I didn't really have a good feeling about this one because I was worried that another offensive line shuffling where Cody Whitehair was playing left guard and then Jenkins was moved to right guard. If I'm wrong, correct me, guys. But and then having Lucas Patrick playing center. With Cody Whitehair playing, I know a lot of people were upset about why Jater Carter wasn't starting instead of a veteran like Whitehair, who's probably on his last leg at this point. But I was worried Max Crosby was going to eat Tyson Bagent alive with such a bad offensive line. And I got to tell you, I was completely wrong on that one. And, Crosby ended up having only one sack in the ball game. Darnell Wright, really, a rookie who has been just terrific the last couple of weeks, basically, and really held him in check. Actually, Wright was the one that I believe gave up a sack on Crosby, which didn't came until I believe in the third quarter. And Bagent certainly benefited from quick passing game before Crosby and the others, even enter the behind the line of scrimmage. So, Brendon, let me start with you. What stood out to you about Bagent's performance yesterday?
You know what? He looked like he was able to just get the ball out quickly. He didn't look rattled at all, which I think is very, very important. That was obviously going to be the big talking point of this game was how is he going to ultimately just perform when the live bullets are coming at him? Obviously, coming from D2, Shepherd, the level of competition is not NFL. Like seeing a guy come from Div 2 into the NFL, it's like, okay, that was a man against boys, and he kind of did that. And so, for him, it was one of those things today or yesterday, I should say, when I was watching him play, it was, okay, how is he going to get the ball out? How calm is he going to be up against Max Crosby, one of the best edge rushers in the entire league? And you know what? He looked every bit of the part to me. And they didn't get him to do too much, which I expected, but granted, you weren't really asking him to do much. Obviously, he's not physically as gifted as Justin Fields, but playing as much as he has, 7 years starting from high school and college, that's a lot of time on tape. And that's just going to do nothing but good things moving forward. And you know what? I think he played fairly well. And Luke Getsy called a phenomenal game plan for him, which you kind of just sit back and go, how come you haven't been able to do that for Justin Fields more often? Mm-hmm. Which is really annoying and really frustrating. Yes. But yeah, you know what? I guess if you were going to call a perfect game plan as the offensive coordinator, having your backup guy in there and displaying a bunch of his skills is a pretty good way to do it.
Rishab, certainly yesterday's game was basically, tailored to Bagent's, skills, strength, and somewhat limitations. Basically, limiting to a lot of checkdowns, short passes, basically a lot of dump offs to a degree. Were you basically happy with the way things turned out for both Bagent and the Bears in terms of offensive production from a passing standpoint?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we didn't pass too much. We only had 162 passing yards, so it's not like he went crazy and showed that he's like QB1 or anything, but he definitely he ran the offense, he ran the system really well, and for being a rookie quarterback, he certainly did not look anything like a rookie quarterback. I mean, if you look at, other teams across the league starting rookie quarterbacks, oftentimes those rookie quarterbacks look, panicked in the pocket. They don't really know what to do. They can't go through their reads properly. And Tyson Bagent in this game, even though it was a pretty simple game plan for him, he still executed the game plan flawlessly, had no interceptions, no turnovers. The ball came out super quick. And I think that's the one thing about him, right? Like his decision making and his accuracy was like really, really good in this game, especially for being a rookie going up against NFL defense compared to, like you said, the Colorado School of Mines, which does not have any players close to what he's going to face off against in the NFL. So I think his confidence I really love too, because there was also like a one moment in the first quarter, I think, where he ran for the first down. You guys remember, and he he put his hands up and he was like hyping up the crowd. So I really love that aspect of it too, where he was like that confident in himself, where he was willing to showboat like that kind of. And great start for him for sure. Like I think it's too early to say what he's going to be in the NFL, obviously, because he only had 160 passing yards. Wasn't really asked to do too much, but if he's only a backup for the Bears, like he could be a really good backup for, a long time.
Yeah, 100%. If nothing else, you have two capable quarterbacks. Bagent is a undrafted free agent, so he still has 4 years of control years that the Bears can use. And obviously, Rishab, you live in the Chicago area, so I think a lot of the Chicago media were kind of debating, as expected, about the whether Tyson Bagent is legitimate and if he has a staying power. Certainly, trying to drum up a unnecessary quarterback controversy for no apparent reasons, and you do have to kind of wonder, though, that Luke Getsy certainly called. We discussed this in our last week's discussion when you and I also welcomed the Lester Wiltfong from Windy City Gridiron, call a different game versus with Bagent, and that was certainly the case, and that was by design, as we can all agree, and they executed very, very well, thanks to in part with a strong running game from Deontay Foreman, who had a real good game, and thank God the Bears managed to keep him on the roster, even though he was inactive for the first 4 weeks of the season, and we were all wondering what's basically it was a numbers game. You had Khalil Herbert and Roshan Johnson was ahead of the depth chart, but now that both players are out with an extended period of time, thank goodness we still had Deontay Foreman performing very, very well yesterday. But do you kind of buy the argument that maybe I was jokingly said it on Twitter that Luke Getsy has two different playbooks, one for Justin and one for Bagent? And Brendon, do you agree with that kind of a theory, and that maybe is fair or not that Bagent runs Getsy's system better than Fields?
It's tough to say because we've only had this one sample size, and no matter what Luke Getsy said, I know listening to him a bunch over the week, he was saying, we're going to try to simple it down for him and try to run a very basic game plan. Obviously, he knows the entire playbook, but, putting him in there, it's really, really interesting. Obviously, we know for a fact that we're going to see him against the Rams. Eberflus came out today and said that Fields is doubtful for the game on Sunday night, which ultimately, if you're saying it's doubtful at this point, you might as well just say he's out. But so we're gonna see him go up in his second week. I don't know if Getsy has a second playbook. Fields and Bagent are two very different quarterbacks, in my opinion. One guy is a lot more cool, calm, and collected in the pocket. And the other guy, you really need to move him a lot more in this being Fields, that he's more comfortable when he's moving. He's allowed to use his athleticism a little bit more. And with Bagent, obviously, those 4 years of college of just in the pocket, like he has a ton of time just kind of going through that. Obviously, he set the NCAA record for passing touchdowns, and he's just a little bit more comfortable in that. So I think it's more or less Getsy looking at it, eventually going, okay, well, this guy, this is his strength, so we're going to use the offensive plays that we would have in this sort of system for Bagent, and maybe we're not going to drop as many, for instance, of like the QB runs. Bagent's a great athlete, but compared to Fields, it looks like a man versus a toddler in terms of athleticism. So it's going to kind of be one of those things where they have different plays just for their strength.
Rishab, regarding Bagent's performance yesterday, now that he is expected to start against Los Angeles Chargers next Sunday night, obviously Bagent will get another full week of practice, and we saw the passing chart that was listed on Tyson Bagent yesterday, which was basically only one pass attempt over 15 yards, and certainly, the game tape is already out there now. Cole Kmet had 0 catches and only 2 penalties yesterday.
National Tight End Day too.
Yeah, ironically on a National Tight End Day,
going up against his fellow Notre Dame tight end as well on the opposite side.
Oh yeah,
exactly. Yep. Only Mercedes Lewis had 1 catch basically. So, at some point, maybe as early as this Sunday against the Chargers, they have to go up against the pass rush of former Bear Khalil Mack, and then Joey Bosa if he's healthy and able to play. They have to deal with another pass rush galore there, and certainly I think I said the videotape is out on Tyson Bagent, and it's up to Brendon Staley to make things more difficult. I would have to think that they're going to have to probably take some a little bit more shots down the middle, or even maybe a deep shot once or twice in the game in order to keep the defense honest. Let me ask a question. Starting with you, Rishab. Do you think Bagent has to, certainly make those throws come Sunday as early as Sunday against the Chargers? Are you confident that Bagent can hit those, middle post routes or deep routes if and when necessary? Because obviously the Minnesota game wasn't exactly a fair assessment, but it was a weird decision by Eberflus to bench him at one last play before halftime, allowing Nathan Peterman to do a Hail Mary, which obviously didn't work, and it was questionable, certainly. Do you feel confident that he can make those throws, or do you still see that maybe we're going to see a little bit more of what we saw yesterday?
Yeah, I really don't know, because I didn't watch too many of his games at Shepherd. Obviously, I never thought he would start, for us this year. So I'm not totally sure what his arm strength is like. So far in the NFL, it's not been great arm strength, obviously. So not totally sure if he can make those throws yet. We're going to have to wait and see until the games actually start if he can make those types of throws. But like you mentioned, at some point he is going to have to do that, because especially with the defensive minded head coach and Brendon Staley, even though his defense has not been performing great, I'd say, he's still smart enough to know Tyson Bagent is only attacking stuff 3 or 4 yards downfield so far, right? So at some point they're going to take away everything at the line of scrimmage, bring the safeties in, bring people close to the line of scrimmage, and force Bagent to make a throw of 10, 15, 20 yards. And again, I'm not totally sure if we can make those throws. I really hope that we can mostly stick to the short passing game, the screen game, and still, hopefully that could work. But at some point Sunday night, he is going to have to take a deep shot to DJ Moore, Darnell Mooney, whoever, and give him a chance to do something. Otherwise, it could be a rough night for him as compared to his outing, last night.
And certainly, the versus Ren Hoyer of the Raiders, who didn't do very well game-wise yesterday. You're going up against Justin Herbert, which is certainly a different player, different quarterback you're going up against, and somebody who is, much more talented than Hoyer that you went up against yesterday. Brendon, you watch a fair amount of college football, and you write about the prospects on the website. But I want to know: do you think the arm strength argument about the Bagent is a bit overrated, or do you think it's a legitimate argument about Bagent's arm strength?
It's both a legitimate argument, and it's one that I personally don't really care about. Whenever you're talking about any quarterback in the NFL, and like you'll talk about prospects, oh, he can make every throw on the field. Every quarterback in the NFL that is on an NFL roster can make every throw on the field. It's one of the ones that I kind of cringe at whenever I hear it. I'm like, well, yeah, no, duh. If he can't make every throw if he can't make every throw in the NFL, then he's not going to be in the NFL. When it comes to Tyson Bagent, do I think he's going to be able to make those, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, 65 plus yard passes down the field, and it's just going to be on a dime? No, but those are special types of throws. It is so rare that you actually see players like quarterbacks actually go out there and try to make those throws. Most of the time when it's deep shots, it's 40, maybe 45 to 50. And I do believe he can make those throws, just depending the accuracy of them. That's kind of going to be the question. And if Luke Getsy is smart, which who knows if he is or isn't, depending on which coloring book that he pulls out for the game plan. I would hope that he doesn't try to take those deep shots. Obviously, with Justin Fields, the biggest thing from him coming out of college is he could make a ton of those great deep shots. Tyson, obviously, I haven't been able to watch any tape from him from Shepherd, but I would trust him to make those 20 to 30 yard passes, those intermediate to a little bit longer. But if I'm Getsy, I'm realistically saying, you know what, let's just continue to go down that short 2 to 3 yard passes, and then just try to set everything up with your run game to open up some of the shots down the more middle of the field. And the best way to negate a really, really strong edge rushing attack is with a really, really strong run game. And the Bears last week, they showed like what they were last year when they were the number one rushing attack, and they didn't even have Justin Fields, who was so important in that avenue anyways. So I'm not worried about Bagent making deep throws. Obviously, they took him out on that final play of the second half, which I just kind of looked at and I was like, you might as well see how far the dude can throw. It's not like Nathan Peterman is going out there and like wowing you. If he were to go down, throw that deep ball, and it's a touchdown, are you going to put him in for the second half? No. So that was just one of those things where you're just kind of looking at the coaching situation going, okay, this is just another kind of not necessarily moment of like you're going to be like questioning it at the end of the year of like, oh, we're firing you because of this. It's just one of those, this is weird. It feels weird, and it's just kind of weird. But yeah, I have no issue with Bagent's arm. If he's in the NFL, he can make every throw.
We're speaking with Rishab Skiri from YouTube's DaWindyCity Productions, and my online contributor, host, colleague from BearGogglesOn, Brendon Donald, joining me on the Double A Team podcast live stream, Bears Victory Monday edition. So obviously, it's too early to discuss about a quarterback controversy because I don't think it exists. And one game alone isn't going to change anybody's mind unless you're just completely out on Justin Fields and just want any small reasons to try and move on from him. But what will it take for you guys to say, okay, I think Bagent can be our number one QB, for the rest of the season, and even maybe next year, other than Justin Fields' injury. Rishab, let me start with you. What will it take for you to say, okay, he's our number one, not just for this year, but maybe even next year, whether or not we draft a quarterback or not.
It's going to take a lot, right? Like, he's going to have to be a Brock Purdy level, which, Brock Purdy only happens once every 10 years. So, like, I'm not even sure it's possible for him to be at that level. He's only had one good game so far, right? And I just think it's too early to even, like, think about the possibility of that existing. But, if you're asking, like, what it would take stat-wise, like, it'd have to be, like, 200-plus passing yards, 250-plus passing yards a game, progression as a quarterback. He's going to have to win a lot of games too. He's going to have to lead the Bears maybe to the playoffs, because I just don't see any other way in which he would be the Bears' long-term starting quarterback, including next year too, especially if we have, top 5 pick from the Carolina Panthers. Like, I feel like if we do move on for Justin Fields, we probably would draft a Caleb Williams, a Drake May, etc., because they're better prospects than Tyson Bagent is. And it would take a lot for sure. Like, he's going to have to win a lot of games, starting with this Sunday night game against the Chargers, right? If he performs really well in that game, throws for like 200-plus passing yards, efficient performance, multiple passing touchdowns, no interceptions, then I'm sure a lot of people will be talking about, him at least being the quarterback for the rest of this year. But I think Matt Eberflus said it best. Like, Justin Fields is the starting quarterback this year. When he's healthy, he's going to be back. And I still hope Fields is a long-term guy. He still very well could be if he comes back. The remaining, I think there'll be like 8 games left in the season if he comes back, in week 8, week 9. And maybe there could be enough time for Justin Fields to still assert himself as the quarterback of the future. But I just don't think it's very realistic to think that Tyson Bagent is going to be that guy, based on the small sample size we have seen, so far.
Brendon, do you agree with Rishab's assessment that it will take a lot more for you to move the needle?
Yeah, for me, I think no matter what Tyson Bagent does on Sunday, I just simply don't think he's actually going to be able to do anything this season to say that he's truly going to be the starting quarterback for the Bears, either for the remainder of the year or going into next season, just simply because this year coming in for the Bears, it was Justin Fields or bust. If he got injured, it was going to be, okay, how long is he going to be injured for? Is this a thing where he's going to be out for the entirety of the year? Then we're going to have to kind of figure out this quarterback situation. Or is it going to be kind of what we're seeing right now, where it's a week, 2 weeks, and once Bagent, if Bagent could throw for 500 yards, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions, run for an additional 100 on Sunday night, and I would still sit back and go, okay, well, if Fields is back next week, you're putting Fields in, because this is the guy that was drafted in the first round. This is the guy that you've put so much time and investment in. You need to see if he's going to be the guy, especially if you have that number 1 overall pick due to Carolina. You need to know for a fact if Justin Fields is the guy. And if you immediately look at Tyson Bagent and say, you know what, you're just getting the rest of the year, you might as well just trade Justin Fields next week at the trade deadline, because if you want to know what Tyson Bagent is going to be moving forward, Justin Fields can't be with the Chicago Bears.
Certainly, Fields and Eberflus are, their futures are tied together, fair or not, certainly. So, if Eberflus is dead set on, giving Justin Fields, the number 1 quarterback spot, and then allowing him to, give all the snaps he deserves, and, just basically for evaluation purposes, then I think Justin Fields is definitely the number 1 quarterback moving forward, at least for this year. And then once he gets injured, or if he struggles, like we saw in the Minnesota game, and the team, the coaching staff is, aghast, and they're just so desperate, then certainly, you could see maybe Justin Fields being benched in the second half, and then maybe that might light a spark. I could certainly see that happening, and I'm sure you guys could probably see that if the coaching staff is really, really desperate. But then you open up a can of worms, certainly for quarterback controversy, that they're the ones certainly starting, not being pressured by the both the media and the fans. Certainly, yesterday's performance certainly comes courtesy of the defensive performance. A very impressive performance. Only 1 sack, but the run defense really stood up well again. The passing passing defense, created turnovers. Jalen Johnson had 2 of them. One for a touchdown, and we saw him do the money, pay me the show me the money sign and everything. So this is our next question is somewhat tied to the trade, the deadline that the Bears are faced with. I believe that is at the end of 20. That's about basically 8 days away. So, and the first trade happened today. The Eagles acquired safety Kevin Byard from the Tennessee Titans today. And, Jalen Johnson, I think, was on 670 The Score and said that he and his agent is working with the Bears towards a contract extension that was posted today. And certainly I'm not ready to jump in and that the contract will be announced within the next 48 to 72 hours just yet. But I wrote that on my latest article that trading for the sake of making trade really doesn't make sense at this point for the Bears, because you're creating more holes for the team to fill when you look into next offseason, where you have to get a quarterback, perhaps fix the offensive line and fix the pass rush, and now you have to get a cornerback, and then get a somebody who can actually fill the Jalen Johnson shoes. So, why create more holes? So let me ask you, both of you, a question. Number one, who do you think is getting traded? And number two, do you think Jalen Johnson will eventually re-sign with the Bears before trade deadline? Brendon, let's start with you.
When it comes to your first question, who do I think is going to get traded? I think it's actually going to be Darnell Mooney. I think Mooney gets moved on from it. It's just, we kind of heard last week a little bit of rumbling that no real contract negotiation has really happened with him yet. And with where DJ Moore is on this offense, Mooney just really hasn't been gelling the last couple of years. Obviously last year you could use the excuses of, okay, well, he's learning a new offense, and he was injured for part of it. And then coming into this year, it was okay, it's him and Chase Claypool. Whoever has the better year is going to ultimately get that contract moving forward. Obviously Claypool was booted out, thank goodness. We're all probably extremely happy about that. And then with Darnell Mooney, he just really hasn't done enough for me right now to just warrant him getting a big time contract. And I think a team, for instance, like the Kansas City Chiefs, would look at Darnell Mooney and be like, hey, we'll send you a 3rd round pick. And I think that would probably be maybe a little bit more than what Darnell Mooney is worth, like a 3rd, 4th, or 5th. I think the Bears would probably take it. And obviously you don't want to get rid of a bunch of young wide receivers, but this year's draft, when it comes to the wide receiver position, I'm a big Marvin Harrison Jr. guy. I want that guy on this team so badly. But if the Bears don't get him, it's like, okay, well, there's still a lot of really good talent. Like guys in the 4th round of the draft this year would have been drafted in not the 1st round, but like in the 2nd round. That's how good this class of wide receivers is going to be. So you can likely afford to trade away Darnell Mooney and still be pretty good going into next year, especially if you can get Marvin Harrison Jr. But when it comes to Jalen Johnson, I think the only way that you would ever trade him, and I really hope it doesn't happen. Like I've been sitting here the last couple days going like, please, for the love of God, do not trade him. He's a top 10 corner in the NFL. And I think this week he kind of showed everyone that he was. But the only way that you would trade him is that if someone comes in with just an unbelievable deal. I'm talking a 1st round pick with multiple other picks. And I do think he's ultimately going to sign a deal with Chicago. Whether it happens during the middle of the season, I think at the end of the year, he's going to be franchise tagged if he doesn't have that. And he'll be making, I think it's like $19 million. So he's going to be pretty happy with that. And they also have that time when he's franchise tagged to negotiate a deal. And I think they'll get that done sooner rather than later. And yeah, we're all probably going to be happy. Is he going to get top 5 corner money? No. Is he going to get top 10? Probably.
Certainly the Mooney trade could ultimately benefit both sides. Certainly, Mooney deserves a little more production. Obviously, he's a free agent. Yesterday, we saw Tyler Scott certainly do more heavy lifting than Mooney or anybody else, any other receiver other than DJ Moore. So that certainly makes sense. Rishab, what do you think of the Bears' approach in the free agency? Certainly, I post this article on CBS Sports that they are not interested and unlikely, to be active at the deadline because they're no longer interested in trading away players for mid-round picks, just like they did last year. Do you agree with that approach? And do you think that, I posed two questions. Who's getting traded? And how do you see Jalen Johnson's situation working out?
So I actually don't think anybody is going to be traded, just like the CBS article is kind of stating. I know he brought up a good point about Mooney. His contract is being over this year. He might not re-sign with the Bears, and he's not been doing that well this year. So long term, it definitely would make sense to trade him away right now. But I still feel like this season does still matter to some extent, right? Like we're still trying to see progress out of Justin Fields if he comes back, or if Tyson Bagent is here. Like if Tyson Bagent's starting the rest of the year, I guess he's not going to be the long-term quarterback. But if Fields does come back, you still want him to have, weapons to still put up the numbers that he can to stay with the Bears long-term, right? So especially with the Bears they're only like a game and a half out of the last wild card spot too. I'm not saying we're going to make the playoffs, obviously, but the season still, I feel like does matter. Where if you only get I feel like you'd only get like a fourth or fifth for Mooney, right? And if you're only getting a fifth rounder, we have so many other draft picks already this year where I feel like the Bears might just keep him at that point just to, still win games this season. So I don't think anybody is going to be traded unless the offer is just crazy. Like if you somehow get like a second rounder for Mooney, or if you get like a first rounder and more for Jalen Johnson, then then you could trade them. But it would definitely have to be a lot because I just don't want the locker room to feel like we're giving up on the season again by trading a bunch of players like we did last year. Right? Like after we traded, Roquan, Robert Quinn away last year, the whole defense just tanked. Our season tanked as well. After we got Claypool as well. So I think Ryan Poles he has to be careful to not only prioritize the future and just completely give up on the present, right? Because the Bears are playing a lot better football right now, and hopefully that continues, the next couple weeks. And in regards to Jalen Johnson, his extension status, I think he will be extended in the next couple of days, just based on the reports we have seen. It seems like he wants to be in Chicago. He's probably not going to be asking for top 5 cornerback money. He shouldn't, because he's missed, so many games every single year, and he has, availability issues, long term. So, it's probably not going to be a massive contract, but I think it does benefit both sides to get a deal done here because he's only 24 years old. He's our best cover corner, without a doubt. The locker room loves him. He's getting turned out too. So I do think he's going to be extended relatively soon.
So let's move on to the other tidbits and news since yesterday. One guy who stood out to me yesterday was Tyrique Stevenson. He has been getting beat quite often. Yesterday he was flagged for somewhat of a questionable pass interference on 2nd and 25 that ended up turning into 1st and 10. Deep into the end, on the Bears, red zone, if I'm not mistaken. Brendon, are you happy with the way Tyrique Stevenson is playing right now? And what else do you still see that you want to see him improve on?
I knew Tyrique Stevenson coming into this year. The second that we drafted him, his play at Miami was such a physical corner. And like he was all up in your face. I knew this year there was going to be a lot of growing pains with him, where it was going to be he's going to get flagged for a lot of things. And, it's just kind of one of those things where you hoped that Jalen was going to be healthy the entire year, because at least that way Tyrique can, at least cover wide receiver number 2. There was a lot of times yesterday where I saw him covering Devontae Adams, and I'm sitting back going, let's not have that. Like, I get that Stevenson is a young guy, he's physical, and you want that up against Davante Adams, but you also have Jalen Johnson, who in the past has been really good against Davante Adams and is super fun to watch. But I think Stevenson is going to be a really, really fun player for the Bears in the future. It's just he needs to just get through this year. It's just, again, we're going through this teething phase, these growing pains. I think once we get to next season, he's going to be a lot better of a corner for us. He's going to be a little bit more controlled, and he's going to be a lot more fun to watch on opposite side of Jalen Johnson. And he has showed that he's making better and better plays, as we can see here on the screen on this Davante Adams breakup. That's stuff that even 2 weeks ago we weren't necessarily seeing, and that's one thing that we saw from him at the college level. And again, right now this year, we're going to have to deal with the growing pains. I think that's just the kind of player that he is, just kind of getting the feel for the NFL landscape, what he can and can't get away from. But ultimately, once he does start to get closer to the end of the year and a little bit more confident and a little bit more knowledge under his belt, I think we should have two really, really good corners.
Rishab, do you like the progress Stevenson has made, and how much do you attribute to the coaching of Matt Eberflus as the defensive coordinator? Do you like the progress? It seems as though he's more of a aggressive man cover, but the Bears certainly somehow still play like a soft coverage. That tends to get you beat a lot. And, Stevenson being a rookie has been a victim at times. But how much do you attribute to Stevenson's growth on Eberflus being, running his defense now?
Yeah, it certainly helped. I still wish we would press him more, let him be physical at the line of scrimmage, because, both him and Kyler Gordon, even Jalen Johnson, they're, big physical cornerbacks, right? So I still wish we would, press them a little bit more instead of, being off in coverage. But like, Brendon said, like, he's improved every single week. The penalties still are an issue, right? He still gets penalized basically every single week. So he definitely has to clean up, not being penalized that often. But any rookie cornerback is going to struggle with penalties, with getting beat, every once in a while. In last game against Davante Adams, he definitely did slip up a few times, in the end zone. I remember Davante had a bad drop that would have been a touchdown allowed by Tyson Stevenson, but he got a little bit lucky there. But aside from that and a few other plays at the beginning of this game, there weren't too many other times where, Tyson Stevenson was allowing a huge amount of yards last game. And going up against a talented group of receivers like the Raiders have, I think that's a very positive step in his development, right? So there's going to be growing pains, like you said, and he's probably not going to figure everything out completely this year, but we're going to have two solid cornerbacks for the future in both Jalen Johnson and Tyson Stevenson, and even Kyler Gordon, if he can, get going and return from his injury and be a little bit better in coverage, get some turnovers going too. Like, we could have a very solid secondary for the future, for sure.
Moving on to another topic of discussion. Over the weekend, certainly, a lot of college football. I think a lot of people are paying more attention now because of the the quarterbacks that will be available in the upcoming draft. Caleb Williams, Drake May are certainly the top two names, and there's also Michael Penix Jr. from Washington, JJ McCarthy from Michigan. Just those two are probably a notch below behind Williams and May. A lot of people have been making claims about Caleb Williams being a generational talent and all that kind of stuff, which certainly didn't I didn't see that from the performance over the weekend. Certainly. Let me start with you, Brendon. If you had to pick one, May, Williams, even after their poor performance over the weekend, do you still buy, into drafting them, or do you feel like I still want to see, Justin Fields next year with a new coach and whatever whatever the offensive coordinator or the system they bring in.
For me, I'm always on the side of the general manager and what's probably going through their minds of what's best for the team moving forward. And if Justin Fields still has some struggles throughout the rest of the year, and you have the first overall pick either due to Carolina or having your own pick, or maybe still having this fantasy that I know a lot of Chicago Bears fans, including myself, wish we had, where we still have the first and second overall pick. But if you do have that first overall pick and Justin Fields still kind of has this roller coaster of a season, you got to go with Drake May. Like, I know, or pardon me, not Drake May, Caleb Williams. With what you've seen from Caleb Williams over the last 2 weeks against Notre Dame and then Utah, he played a lot better against Utah than he did against Notre Dame, but he's going into this tough stretch. And you know what? With USC, they're not that good of a team. They have a really, really poor defense, and their offensive line is suspect at best, kind of like what we're talking about with the Chicago Bears here. So, I think ultimately that team was being overrated due to Caleb Williams' status, and he can't do it all himself. But if you have the opportunity to go out there and draft what a lot of people I've heard said is a generational prospect in Caleb Williams, and then there's even people that I hear saying Drake May is a generational prospect. I'm not there yet with him. I think he is Justin Herbert light, which would still be a phenomenal player to have. But if we can get Caleb Williams, and then not only once you draft Caleb Williams, that just resets having to pay your quarterback, and having that second first round pick, whether it's second overall, third, all the way up to, let's just say 32. That would be another great player that you can add to the roster, and just to help continue to build this team. And I would love Justin Fields to be the guy for the Chicago Bears. There's going to have to be a lot for me over these last couple weeks to convince me that he is. And I would love to see him in an offensive system, for instance, like what Ben Johnson is running with the Lions, or maybe even a Harbaugh coming in, or just list your name of offensive-minded head coach coming in with a new offense. But yeah, I would love I'd love for him to be the guy, but I'm going to be needing to be convinced so badly that he is, if we had that first overall pick and Caleb Williams is there. Yeah, he's had a couple of struggles over the last couple of weeks, but name any college quarterback at some point who didn't struggle at some point.
Yeah. Rishab, are you still in on Caleb Williams despite the last 2 weeks and all the noises being made about his attitude and him wanting the share of NFL ownership, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, I totally am. I think with the ownership thing, that kind of got
somewhat blown out of proportion, I think.
I was going to say that, right? Because I think that was a report back in July, like before the season even started. And then all the aggregator accounts just brought that up when he was having a bad stretch of games, obviously, because they knew that people would hate on him for it. So he's definitely like a confident guy. Some people might say cocky at times, which I'm okay with that if your play can back it up, right? And his play for the vast majority of the last 2 years has backed it up. He has, like people have said, like shades of Mahomes in him. I'm not going to say he's Mahomes, obviously, but like some of the arm angles that he, displays, the crazy throws he makes off platform, they are like high level, best in the NFL types of throws. Now, the only concern I have with him is that his weaknesses are still kind of similar to Justin Fields' weaknesses, like holding onto the football too long sometimes, trying to make something when there's really no play to be had, taking too many sacks sometimes, being reckless with the ball sometimes. But he's still obviously a much higher caliber prospect than Justin Fields was coming out of Ohio State. He's passed the ball a lot more than Justin Fields did at Ohio State. So, I would be totally happy taking Caleb Williams at number 1. I think the main question we have, or the main debate we would have, is that if we don't have the number 1 pick, like what if we have pick number, 3, and both Caleb Williams and Drake May are gone? Like, do you take Michael Penix then? Do you trade back some more and take a different quarterback? So, I'd be happy with both Caleb Williams and Drake May, right? Like, they're two of the best prospects we have seen in the last, however many years, right? So it's going to depend again on how Justin Fields does the rest of the year. I still think there's, a tiny chance Justin Fields could do enough to win over the, respect of the Bears front office and maybe not be extended for a long period of time, but at least like get him on that last year of his contract to see if he can do anything next year. But like Brendon said, it would take a lot out of him if the Bears have the number 1 pick to not select Caleb Williams or Drake May.
Does JJ McCarthy move your needle, Brendon and Rishab? Let me start with you, Brendon. Does he move the needle for you?
He's my number 3 quarterback in this draft. From what we're seeing from him this year, obviously last year it was when he started the year, it wasn't guaranteed that he was the starter in Harbaugh's system, and then this year it was okay, he's guaranteed to be the starter, and I've only seen improvement week in and week out from him. He's not necessarily making those highlight reel plays that you're seeing from Caleb Williams or Drake May. He's just kind of one of those guys that has just been more consistent over these last 2 years. And what you see from him week in, week out is realistically what you're getting. You're not having the Caleb Williams of where sometimes he likes to get a little bit too cute with the ball. And with Drake May, he reminds me so much of what Jay Cutler was, where it was like, okay, there's some drives where he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and then there's the next drive where you're like, oh, please God, no, like, what are you doing? And so there's sometimes that you kind of have that little bit of, that's kind of what Justin Herbert was like coming out of school as well. And so, you don't really know what you're going to get, at least with JJ. Drive in, drive out, you know what you're getting. And so, yeah, without a doubt, I would need to be convinced to draft him. Rashad brought up a great point in his last little talking point where if we have like the 3rd pick, I don't know if we would go quarterback. I think we might just ultimately go back to that point of going, okay, we're just going to get a bunch of really, really good pieces, draft Marvin Harrison Jr. and maybe an offensive lineman. Next year's draft, in the 2025 draft, there's a pretty good couple of quarterbacks at the top of that one. The kid from Penn State, Drew Aller, I'm pretty sure his name is. He's going to be the number 1 pick in 2025. And, if the Bears just load up the team and you kind of give that one more year of Justin Fields, if Justin Fields does a really, really good job next year with all of those talents, well, boom, you don't have to worry about it. But if the team is still bad enough, it's like, okay, well, that there's really good talent in next year's draft as well.
I'm going to segue into that J.J. McCarthy question. Certainly, Jim Harbaugh's name has been brought up into the coaching lore this week because of the possible NCAA sanction over a sign stealing scandal, which maybe it says all about nothing. And Lincoln Riley's name somehow got popped up because he also wants to move on to the NFL, and he and of course Caleb Williams is a package deal of sorts. Now, I don't think Jim Harbaugh, JJ McCarthy is like a slam dunk package deal, even if JJ ends up winning the Heisman or even the national championship for that matter. But let's start with you, Rishab. Which one? And I think we probably know this answer, but. Do you take Jim Harbaugh as a your head coach, and if Caleb Williams and Lincoln Riley as a package, do you still take Jim Harbaugh over Riley, Caleb Williams?
Well, I think Jim Harbaugh would take Caleb Williams if we did draft him, or sign Jim Harbaugh as a head coach, right? I think he would recognize that Caleb Williams is still the better prospect than JJ McCarthy. I don't think he'd be too biased like that. So. And if you're asking me like my choice between Jim Harbaugh, Lincoln Riley, obviously Jim Harbaugh, right? Like he's already had success in the NFL with the 49ers. He turned them around from a 10-year stretch of like being really bad to the first year he was there. Nobody thought they were going to be good, but they go to the NFC Championship game, I think, if I recall correctly, the very first year. Go back to the Super Bowl then the following year. After that, another NFC Championship game appearance. So this guy knows how to win. He knows how to build a culture. And I know Bears fans might be sick of like that rah-rah, culture guy, but Jim Harbaugh knows, how to surround himself with the best minds on both defense and offense, right? The best coaches. So, I'm confident he would also get really good offensive coordinator, really good defensive coordinator. And he's a proven NFL coach, right? I think that's what a lot of Bears fans want. This hiring cycle, a proven, head coach in the NFL, or at least like a proven offensive mind, and Jim Harbaugh is proven in the NFL as compared to Lincoln Riley, who does not know how to build a defense. At Oklahoma, at USC now, he just cannot hire people that know, how to coach defense, and that's a problem, right, in the NFL where you have to have at least an average defense to win a Super Bowl to even make the playoffs. And I'm not confident that Lincoln Riley would be able to build a good defense here in Chicago. And obviously the offense would be really good with him and Caleb Williams, but I still think that with Jim Harbaugh, like, he would be okay with, drafting a Caleb Williams, drafting a Drake May instead of a JJ McCarthy.
Mm-hmm. Brendon, I'm assuming you would take Jim Harbaugh, even if it means like removing Ryan Poles from the equation, because we know that Jim is the guy who wants to have total operations, and maybe somebody like Tom Gamble, who is already on the Michigan staff and has experience working for the 49ers front office dating back to their days together, would be probably a better fit than Lincoln Riley, even if it means that Caleb Williams is a package deal.
Yeah, when it comes to Harbaugh, I think the only way he gets signed with the Bears is Poles is going to look at him and say, listen, I know you want to have control, but like, this isn't college. Like, if you're going to come be the head coach of the Bears, this is a joint marriage between us. You're going to coach the football team. You're going to tell me what you need, because I don't think Poles is going to want to do that. When Poles got hired, he said, I want to have complete control over who I'm going to bring in, and I don't want the brain trust that was ultimately there to bring me in. And so I do believe that Harbaugh, he would ultimately probably accept that deal. I know it would probably be more or less overhyped that would be the one thing that he's going to come in and he has to bring his guy. I think ultimately he would just be happy to come coach the team that ultimately put a ton of faith in him and drafted him in the first round of the NFL, kind of like what Michigan did with him going to college, and what Rashid was saying beforehand of like this rah-rah. I think that's what the Bears coaching staffs need. Obviously with John Fox, he was kind of checked out and he was a player's coach where he was wanting to be your buddy. Matt Nagy tried to be everyone's best friend and this and that. And Eberflus kind of feeling that same way. I want one of these, angry SOBs to get into the face of the quarterback, grab his face mask after he throws a dumb interception and let him have it, because we really haven't had that for a lot of years. And sometimes that's what you need to just get it going. And when it comes to Lincoln Riley, the only reason that you would be hiring Lincoln Riley is because you don't have to change the offense for Caleb Williams. He walks in day one. He goes, I know every single play that's going to be run. I know how it's going to be run. Everyone else is just going to have to adjust to it. And that's not a strategy that I really like. Obviously, everyone on the offense is going to have to adjust to a new offense anyways. But, with Lincoln Riley's inability to build a defense, I know Poles would love to still try to draft some defensive players, but Lincoln Riley would come in and go, no. Like, we need this, and this. And I feel like defense would kind of get tossed to the side. And so I would much rather have Harbaugh, who, if he comes to Chicago, he knows defense is extraordinarily important and key, and he's not going to allow that to go to the wayside. Obviously, we've seen some of the defenses that he's had at Michigan. He knows defense is important.
Mm-hmm. I think still, too early to draw a conclusion on this one, because a lot can change between now and then. I mentioned earlier about the Michigan's NCAA investigation into sign stealing. Maybe Harbaugh has already been suspended the first 4 games of the year, and this might probably push him over the edge. Certainly not the one that would preclude Michigan from competing in the not only in the national championship, but they will have their, titles being rescinded if they ended up winning at all. And then also Ryan Poles, certainly he's hoping that a lot of his draft picks right now, the last 2 years, hopefully they make enough contribution moving forward to, present to Kevin Warren and say, my picks are contributing. It's just the coaching staff. I made a mistake on Eberflus, and I'll take 100% responsibility. And I want to be able to, do it right this time. And then certainly Kevin Warren, what he's thinking. He was a Big Ten commissioner. He knows Jim Harbaugh. There's a certain allure and attraction to it. There's perhaps maybe a line that has already been established between those two dating in their Big Ten days, and maybe Warren decides to offer a lifeline on Jim Harbaugh if he decides he's had enough with the college and he just wants to coach pros and be a hero for Chicago, where he played most of his career and is still well known moving forward. All right, let's finish up with this week's game against the Los Angeles Chargers. Certainly I mentioned earlier, they have a formidable pass rush in Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa when they're healthy. And certainly, the Bears have to make sure that, that their pass protection is max again. If they can, certainly do well against Max Crosby, hopefully they are able to do that against the Mack and Joey Bosa. And, on the passing side, certainly they have to be able to, get the ball out quickly, maybe have to take some shots, certainly, because I think the Chargers will likely to, cover the underneath game and try to take that away from the Bears as well. Rishab, let's start with you. What are your thoughts on the several keys to the victory against the Chargers this Sunday night?
Yeah, it's going to be the same keys as the last game, right? Like, we're going to have to run the ball well. We're going to have Deontay Foreman have probably another 10, 15 plus carries. Darrington, I think actually Roshan Johnson's coming back for this game.
Yes, he's off the concussion protocol, which is a good news.
Yeah, so, at this point, I think Roshan would be the backup behind Deontay Foreman, just with how good Deontay Foreman played in the last game. So I would still hope to give a lot of carries to Deontay Foreman, to Roshan Johnson. Maybe pass protecting, you can put in Roshan Johnson because he's a better pass protector than Deontay Foreman is. But yeah, overall, you're going to have a lot of, quick, short throws again, because like you mentioned, Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, they're going to be, in Tyson Bagent's face at some point during this game, just because we don't have, elite level tackles right now. We have a ascending one in Darnell Wright. We have Larry Borom right now on the left side, who's not very good. So we're going to have to keep the ball, out of Tyson Bagent's hands by, quick throws, screen passes, running the ball, stuff like that. And we're going to have to play really good defense too. We should hopefully be able to give Tyson Bagent one extra possession, maybe two extra possessions, by forcing a turnover here, forcing an interception there. And obviously Justin Herbert is the best quarterback I think we've gone up against this year, besides Patrick Mahomes, obviously. So it's going to be a tough test for the defense for sure. And we're going to have to blitz at times. We're going to have to send pressure at times to actually get a guy in Justin Herbert's space to force a bad decision. Otherwise, if you just let him sit there in the pocket, he's going to dice us up down the field. So I would say, key number one, run the ball. Key number two, get the ball out of his hands fast, Tyson Bagent that is. And key number three, just play, damn good defense.
Absolutely. Brendon, what are your thoughts to the keys to the game?
You got to do the KISS strategy. Keep it simple, stupid. And again, on offense, you're going to have to go back to a lot of running, Deontay Johnson or Foreman, pardon me. Don't know where Johnson came from.
No, Roshan Johnson. Yeah.
Yeah. You got to continue with that strong run game, force it up the middle. I was talking a little bit earlier, when you have a really potent edge rushing attack, you got to rush the ball. That's going to slow that down a lot more, force them to be more worried about the rush than trying to get after the quarterback. Khalil Mack, obviously former Bear. This is the first time that he's played the Bears since being traded. So, he's going to have that little bit of chip on his shoulder saying, hey, you guys traded me away and look at what your team has become. And so you're going to have to make sure that Tyson Bagent is having the ball out of his hands very, very quickly. And then when you're on the when you're on the defensive side of the ball, you got to get pressure on Justin Herbert. Austin Eckler's back, Keenan Allen, Quentin Johnson, Joshua Palmer. They're all fairly good, and they have a decent O-line as well. So this could be one of those games where it turns into a little bit of a shootout, kind of what we saw with the Chargers and the Vikings earlier this year. But yeah, needless to say, I'm worried about this game. I am severely worried about this because Justin Herbert has had some ups and downs this year.
Yeah.
I honestly think that's more due to coaching than anything.
Mhm.
But that's another thing. You can't walk into that game going, okay, well, we know Brandon Staley is very questionable with his coaching, so we're just going to rely on that. You got to prepare like he is the best coach to have ever coached, and knowing that he's not going to make any mistakes while coaching this game. And this is going to be a really interesting test.
Mm-hmm. Rishab, what's your final score?
Yeah, I want to be optimistic, obviously, but just being realistic, I'd probably have to pick the Chargers right now, 20, maybe 28, 21. Just because I'm not sure if we can win in a shootout with a rookie quarterback like Tyson Bagent. We just haven't seen enough out of him to predict that yet. So we could win this game, right? Because the Chargers have been playing down to their opponent's level. Oftentimes this year,
achieving very much.
They only have 2 wins so far, same as us, right? So very easily could win this game, but I do think the Chargers probably pull out on top.
Brandon, your score?
Just thinking about this one, it's probably going to be about 28-17 for the Chargers. Okay. I think we're going to get a couple of points here, but ultimately I think they're probably just going to be a little too much for this Bears team. And we've seen Luke Getsy, after putting together a good game plan, unfortunately regress.
Follow it through, yes.
And so that's one of the things that I'm also really worried about going into this game is just to me this feels like it's a really tough, I don't want to say trap game, because having two win teams going up against each other, neither team is trapping the other, but it kind of has one of those feelings of a trap game where the Chargers are just going to come out and dominate. But for me, it's going to be 28-17.
Yeah, that's one thing I'm concerned about. Luke Getsy just can't seem to find any sort of consistency, no matter who's at quarterback, and that's one of the things I'm very, very concerned about. I don't think he's going to try and get Bagent into a shootout with Herbert, because that's preposterous. Certainly from an arm strength perspective, I like what the Bears' defense are doing. Certainly, credit where credit is due with Eberflus calling the defense now, which is much better than what Alan Williams was doing as a DC now, which it seems like a long, long time ago, because we don't even remember, Alan Williams and his issues. That was a national punching line last month, if you remember. But I think the Bears will still have some chances on offense running the ball. You have Foreman and Roshan Johnson, 1-2 punch, and then you throw in maybe Darrington Evans, certainly I don't think he's going to be benched. I think he might get some carries and catches out of the backfield and keep defense honest. And I do agree. I think Bears defense might have a bit of a challenge with Herbert and Keenan Allen. Mike Williams is out with the torn Achilles that he suffered against the Vikings earlier this year. Certainly a very interesting matchup. I'm going to say Chargers will win this one 27-24 in this one. Well, guys, as always, it's been a pleasure having you, on our show tonight. And let's hope that, it will be a very interesting game Sunday night. It will be, regardless of what the others say, it's the Bears who will be on national spotlight. So it will give us an interesting view. And we get to watch the Bears and see if they can build up our success, certainly on a national stage, even if it's, on a less than ideal stage. So, Brendon, thank you for your time as well. Follow Brendon on his Twitter at Donald Brendon, and then also on BearGogglesOn.com as well. You can find Rishab's YouTube page at DaWindyCity Productions. And then also follow him on Twitter as well. Guys, thank you so much, and let's hope to do this again next week. Hopefully another Bears victory against the Los Angeles Chargers. Have a great night, guys. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thanks for having me.
You as well.
Thank you very much. All right.